in today's video, we're going to be sewing our block number 5 from our designer mystery block of the month from Fact Shop. This is what we're going to be sewing today. It looks like a dog with a bow. The block that we're sewing this month is designed by Barbara Grove from Me and My Sister Design, and they also designed from Moda. The name of this block is My Best Friend. This is what it looks like. Let me show you what the actual block looks like. With that being said, let's dive in and start sewing our block for month number 5. Here we go. So here are my pieces all cut out to sew our block number 5. So this is the first part that we needed to complete right here, and it's all done. And I did go on ahead and make it ahead of time because there's not a whole lot to it. So that's that. The next step is to go on and sew step number 2. So our next step is to take our rectangle and a square, and we are going to sew on each corners. So we have 2 here. We're only going to use 1 for right now. So we have this one right here, and then we're going to take our square piece. So we're going to take our L piece and our E piece, and we're going to snowball. So we're going to sew from upper right to lower left, and then we're only going to make 1. We're going to do a flying geese. So now what we're going to do is just sew. All right, and then so we're going to just flip it open, and then I'm going to cut, and I'm just going to press it open with my finger, and then I'm going to take another square and sew onto the other side, making sure that I have my pretty size together and sew. So I'm just going to come around here and cut. It's not anything that I need to measure or want to measure. So I'm just going to press it open with my finger, and then I'll go over it with an iron. So all we need to do here is make 1, and this is it right here. All done. So our next step is to take this piece right here and sew our square piece right here onto the top. We're going to sew this square here, and we're going to sew it onto the top. This is all we have right now, right here. And so our next step is to take our rectangle, and we're going to sew it to the side. We're just going to sew, and generally speaking, I like to have my seam up like this, so that way I know that I'm not chopping off the end of my flying geese right here. I'm a lot more comfortable sewing this way because I can see what I'm doing. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and press this whole thing that I just sewn. So now our second step is done. We have our first step right here. All right, and then we're gonna have our second step right here. So I'm gonna put them all right there. The next thing we're doing is taking another rectangle piece. We're going to sew on to the corner. We're gonna take another square, and we're gonna sew onto the corner, going from upper left to mid right, rather. Just going to sew. And there's really no point of me saving this part because it's not enough for anything. So what I'm just gonna do is just cut it off. I don't need it. I think I have enough scrap that my scraps are screaming at me as it is right now because there are just too many of them. So this is done. And so our next step, we're going to make a 3/4 square, and we're only gonna make 1, but I'm doing mine a different way. We're gonna take our square, since we're only going to make 1, so I'm gonna take my 2 squares, I'm gonna put them pretty sized together. Whenever I improvise in making these blocks, I always tell you that in the pattern, Fact Shop has a great illustration that are beginner friendly, but this is the way I prefer to do mine. So I'm going to take this 2 square, I'm gonna make an HST. So that's what we're going to do first to make our 1/4 square. So now it gives me 2 HST. I'm only gonna need 1, so I'm just gonna snip down the middle. As long as I'm not cutting through my stitches, I'm fine. Okay, so now I have 2 HST. So these 2 squares yield 2 HST. So what I'm going to do is bring our red piece, our red square. The orientation as to which this is facing is very important. So I want to make sure this is facing the right direction. So what we're going to do now is bring our HST with the brown part going this way, and then the background going this way. I'm going to put this directly on top, making sure that it is right like that. It's not exact same size, but we're gonna trim it down. Okay, so it's not gonna matter at the end. So what I'm gonna do is flip it back, okay, making sure that it's supposed to be the way it's supposed to be. So that's how it's supposed to be, right, like so. What I'm gonna do is stitch from here to here, and then we'll have our 1/4 square. I'm just gonna sew straight down the middle. All right, so now I'm gonna flip it back before I cut, to make sure that I have what I'm supposed to have. And I do. So I have this brown part here, I have this here, and then I have this red part here. So what I'm gonna do now is bring my ruler and I'm going to trim it to what size we need. So now I have this ruler right here. This is a different kind of ruler. This is the strip tube ruler. And it does the same thing as the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer does, or it gives you a bigger HST. So what I'm gonna do now is bring this to the size that I need, make sure that I have it right, and then I'm gonna cut. So now I have a perfect 3/4 square right here. And all I needed was just to sew 2 HST and a square and we're done. And then I have an extra one here, but we only need to make 1. So that's that. Our next step is to take this right here that was previously made and then bring this right here and then sew it. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Just gonna line it up and sew. This step right here is completed. So our next step is to combine all these steps together. So we're going to bring this right here and then we're gonna sew it onto this part right here. Then we're gonna connect our rectangle on the bottom part. Now this is what it's supposed to be looking like. All pressed, done, completed for this step. So what we're going to do now is add our rectangle piece and then I'm going to put it on the bottom. This is how you know your seam allowance are correct. When you put in your next piece and it matches perfectly like that. This is how you know your seam allowance are correct 1/4 inch. I just want to point that out, by the way. Because it's very important to have, you can use whatever method you want, however way you want to cut, but when it comes to sewing the seam allowances, it is very, very important to maintain your 1/4 inch. And this is how you know when you have something, when you are sewing everything correctly. So this right here should seamlessly match with this right here. Just want to point that out. So this step right here is completed, okay? So our next step is to take our rectangle and we are going to snowball another square onto the corner, all right? We're going to snowball this to the corner and we're going to sew from the left to the bottom. All right, and so this is what this is looking like. Our next step is to take this brown piece right here, this brown polka dot, bring it over and we're going to sew another one to the corner and snowball it. We're going from the upper right to the left middle. I always want to flip it back before I cut to make sure that I have it the right way or how it's supposed to be. Then I will snip. So now this step right here is completed. So now we're going to take our strip right here. We're just going to sew this 2 strip right here and then we're going to take our kind of like a rectangle and we're going to sew them together. Okay, so this is our next step right here. I'm going to sew this 2 right here, then I'm going to connect it to this. I don't want to press this with an iron right now because they are strip and they are small. And the reason why I'm not doing that is because I don't want them to stretch. So what I'm going to do now is just sew these together. So now this is done, sewn together. So what we're going to do is take our piece from here. We're going to take another rectangle and we're going to sew it onto the bottom. Then we're going to build a block. So our next step is to take our S piece, put it like this, take our dog body, bring it like this, and then we're going to connect these together. So I have all the pieces sewn right here. And all we're doing now is connect them together. My next step is to just kind of sew these right here and then connect this part, okay? And then with this one, I'm just going to press away from my seam. So I'm pressing on towards where there's no seam and I'm gonna connect this part. So now I'm gonna connect the feet and I'm gonna sew. So now all my components are sewn on. What I'm gonna do now is just sew these 2 and then connect it to the dog body, okay? So on this last part, I am going to take the time to pin my segment together so that way I am sure that they do line up. I'll pin it and then ease them in. So this right here, this seam, I wanted to make sure that they do match. I'm going to pin it. Just like that. I'm just going to pin one more time. What I've done is pin all the segment to make sure everything lines up. The next thing I'm going to do is just sew I'm going to sew on the finishing component after my block is completely sewn. So this is the construction of it. I'm just going to just kind of like put it together at this point. So this is what all my finishing component looks like. I've gotten the blue top of the roof, and I've gotten the red top of the roof done. And I've also completed the flowers here. So every month as I sew each block, I will go on ahead and just add the component to it. So that way everything will be completed by the time the 12-month rolls around. I'm not gonna be frazzled and try to sew on the finishing component. I would just be done, and it will be a lot easier on my part. I hope you guys are doing the same thing too. So that way you don't get overwhelmed closer to the end. You can kind of like do a little bit at a time. That's what I did. I did the flowers one day, and I did the roof the next day or the next week. I mean, we have 12 months, but you don't want to wait till the 10th month and then try to cut, because then it gets overwhelming and it becomes too much. And that's why UFO starts. That's why you have unfinished project, because it just gets too much. Life gets in the way, and that's just the truth, right? Here are my blocks. This is everything up to date. I have completed all of the sewing component that is needed for each block. So when we receive our block number 6, that goes over here, I'm just going to go ahead and sew it. Then I will sew the sashing together. That means I will have row 1 and row 2 all completed. Then I know we're halfway done. So by the time we finish the entire quilt, my quilt will also be done as well. Now, I wanted to point something out after sewing this block. This is our block number 5. I'm not sure if I am keen on this block, because we have all this right here that are like not traditional, but just regular normal block. And then we have this right here. I know we have a bird here, but I don't know if I want to keep this block. I want you to comment down below and let me know what you think. I am almost to where I want to sew another block here. I'm thinking about switching this dog out to a block that I am more keen on. That's the same size. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. I don't know. Comment down below and let me know what you guys think. But I don't think I want to keep it in. I think I'm just gonna like take the block itself out, leave the component, and then just switch the actual block out. That is where I am right now. Again, this is everything all sewn, but then here we have a bird, and then here we have a dog. I don't know what we're gonna have next. Maybe if we have a cat somewhere in the sew along, I might be keen on leaving it in, but for now, I don't know. That's just my humble opinion. I'm just kind of letting you know what my thought process are right now. So there we go on that. Now, another thing that I'm going to point out on this component that is sewn, I actually, this right here, I made a mistake. So this line is going this way, but it's supposed to be going a different, like this way, and then this one's supposed to be going this way. It was I don't know, my brain wasn't thinking right or whatnot. It was a kind of like a oops. So since I had a oops, I just made all of it consistent. So if you're gonna make a mistake in any kind of sewing, make it consistent. So that's kind of what I did. If you have the finishing kit, your stripe will be going this way. And on this one, the stripe should be going this way. But on mine is going a different way. So I kept it consistent on all of it. So if you look here, it's also consistent. It's easier on the eye. So they're all consistent throughout. This is all I have for you today. Block number 5 of our designer mystery is completed. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to subscribe down below. Give me a thumbs up, and I would love to see you in my next video. You have a great day.